The crystalline deserts of Proxima B glittered under the crimson sky as Raven Blackwood surveyed the wreckage before her. The mercenary's cybernetic eye whirred softly, analyzing the scattered debris of what had once been a magnificent vessel. Her client's instructions had been clear: retrieve the quantum core from the crash site, no questions asked. The payment would set her up for life, assuming she survived. Another day, another suicidal mission, she muttered, adjusting the plasma rifle slung across her back. The atmosphere on this outer rim planet was barely breathable, and her rebreather mask hissed with each intake. As she approached the wreckage, her sensors detected an unexpected energy signature, something alive. Through the twisted metal and shattered crystal, a figure emerged. Tall, graceful, and decidedly not human. The alien warrior stood at least 7 feet tall, with iridescent purple skin that seemed to shimmer with its own inner light. Silver markings traced patterns across exposed arms, and piercing golden eyes fixed on Raven with predatory intensity. The alien spoke, her voice a melodic rumble that somehow cut through the howling wind. "You're trespassing on sacred ground, human." Despite her commanding presence, Raven noticed the slight tremor in her stance, the way she favored her right side. "I'm just here for salvage," Raven replied, keeping her hands visible but within reach of her weapons. "Name's Raven. You look like you could use some help. I am Nixus Kthar, First Blade of the Stellar Dominion, and I need no assistance from a primitive species." The warrior's words carried pride, but pain flickered across her features as she shifted her weight. Raven smirked beneath her mask. "That wound suggests otherwise, Your Highness. I've got medical supplies, and you've got information I need. Maybe we can help each other?" Nixus's hand tightened on her energy blade, its purple glow casting eerie shadows across the wreckage. "You dare proposition a Kthar warrior?" "I dare to offer survival," Raven countered, slowly reaching for her medkit. "That crash scattered quantum radiation everywhere. Without proper treatment, that wound will kill you within hours. And without your help, I'll never find what I'm looking for in this maze of debris." Their standoff lasted several tense heartbeats before Zara lowered her weapon fractionally. "Your logic is not entirely flawed." She stumbled slightly, catching herself against a twisted bulkhead. Raven moved forward, supporting the warrior before she could fall. Up close, Zara's presence was overwhelming, not just her physical size, but the raw power that seemed to emanate from her. The mercenary's cybernetic eye detected elevated vital signs, both Nixus's and her own. As Raven applied regenerative gel to Zara's wound, she couldn't help but notice the warrior's intense gaze studying her every move. "You have augmentations," Zara observed. "Unusual for your kind." "Let's just say I've had to adapt to survive," Raven replied, focusing on her work rather than the strange flutter in her chest when Zara's fingers brushed against her arm. "As have I," Nixus said softly, an unexpected vulnerability in her tone. "My ship was sabotaged. Someone wanted to ensure I never delivered my message to the human coalition." Raven's hands stilled. "What message?" "War is coming," Nixus stated grimly. "There are those among both our peoples who would profit from conflict. I was sent to prevent it, though now I suspect my mission was compromised from the start." The implications hit Raven like a plasma burst. Her anonymous client, the quantum core, the suspicious timing, it all connected. "The core you're carrying, it contains proof?" Nixus nodded, then winced as Raven sealed the last of her wounds. "Evidence of the conspiracy, and the means to prevent a war that would devastate both our civilizations." "Well," Raven said, standing and offering her hand to the warrior, "looks like my salvage mission just got a lot more interesting. Partners?" Nixus regarded the offered hand with a mixture of suspicion and curiosity before clasping it in her own. The contact sent an unexpected surge of electricity through them both. "Partners," she agreed, "though I warn you, breaking a pact with a Kthar warrior has consequences most severe." "Wouldn't dream of it," Raven replied with a grin, trying to ignore how her pulse quickened under Nixus's intense gaze. Now, let's find that core before whoever sabotaged your ship realizes you survived. As they ventured deeper into the wreckage, neither woman acknowledged the growing tension between them, a force as powerful and mysterious as the quantum energies they sought. Their mission had just begun, but both sensed that their lives would never be the same after this day on the crystalline plains of Proxima b. The crimson sun began to set, casting long shadows through the twisted metal as Raven and Nixus made their way through the wreckage. Each step brought them closer to their objective, and perhaps, though neither would admit it, closer to each other. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, but in that moment, both women felt the weight of something far more personal taking root in their hearts. The bowels of the crashed starship groaned like a dying beast as Raven and Nixus navigated its twisted corridors. Emergency lights flickered intermittently, casting strange shadows that danced across the walls. Raven's cybernetic eye continuously scanned for threats while her organic one kept drifting to her alien companion. The quantum core's signature is getting stronger, Raven said, checking the readings on her wrist device. But something's not right. These energy patterns are erratic. Nixus moved with fluid grace despite her recent injuries, her iridescent skin seeming to absorb and reflect the emergency lighting. The core is unstable. The saboteurs didn't just want to prevent my mission, they wanted to ensure nothing survived. A distant crash echoed through the corridor, causing both women to freeze. Raven's hand instinctively found her plasma rifle while Nixus's energy blade hummed to life. They moved in perfect synchronization, covering each other's blind spots as if they'd fought together for years rather than hours. "We're not alone," Nixus whispered, her golden eyes narrowing. "Scavengers. They follow disaster like parasites." "Scavengers don't usually carry military-grade cloaking tech," Raven replied, her cybernetic eye detecting faint distortions in the air ahead. "These are professionals. Someone really doesn't want us reaching that core." The attack came from three directions at once. Shadowy figures materialized from thin air, their armor bearing no insignia but their weapons distinctly human in design. Raven rolled behind a fallen support beam as plasma bolts seared the air where she'd been standing. Nixus moved like liquid lightning, her energy blade carving graceful arcs through the air as she engaged two attackers at once. The third aimed his weapon at the warrior's exposed back, but Raven was faster. Her plasma rifle barked twice, and the attacker crumpled. "Behind you!" Raven shouted as a fourth assailant emerged from the shadows. Nixus spun, but not quite fast enough. A vibroblade caught her across the shoulder, drawing silver blood. The warrior's response was devastating, her energy blade cleaved through the attacker's weapon and armor in one fluid motion. In the aftermath of the skirmish, Raven rushed to Nixus's side, medical kit already in hand. "Let me see that wound." "It is nothing," Nixus insisted, though she didn't pull away when Raven began treating the injury. "Your intervention was appreciated. Perhaps I underestimated human combat capabilities." "Just my combat capabilities, or humans in general?" Raven asked with a smirk, trying to ignore how her fingers tingled where they contacted Nixus's skin. "Both require further study," Nixus replied, her golden eyes meeting Raven's with an intensity that made the mercenary's breath catch. Raven cleared her throat, focusing on the wound. These weren't random attackers. Their gear, their tactics, their black ops, probably working for whoever sabotaged your ship. "The Crimson Dawn," Nixus said grimly. "A faction within the stellar dominion that believes war with humanity is inevitable. They would rather strike first than risk human advancement surpassing our own. And I'm guessing they have counterparts on our side," Raven added, finishing with the wound. "Arms dealers, politicians, anyone who stands to profit from conflict. The real question is, how high does this conspiracy go?" "High enough to make both of us expendable," Nixus replied, rolling her shoulder to test the repair. Her hand caught Raven's before the human could withdraw. Your skill as a healer matches your prowess as a warrior. The compliment sent an unexpected warmth through Raven's chest. Well, in my line of work, you learn to patch yourself up or you don't survive long. Speaking of survival. She gestured to the fallen attackers. We should get moving before their friends come looking. They continued deeper into the ship, but something had changed between them. The initial suspicion had given way to a grudging respect, and perhaps something more. Every shared glance carried new weight, every accidental touch lingered a moment longer than necessary. The ship's central chamber loomed ahead, a cathedral-like space now twisted and broken. In its center, a pillar of purple energy pulsed rhythmically, the quantum core, still intact but clearly unstable. There it is, Nixis breathed. The key to preventing war between our peoples. Raven studied the erratic energy patterns with growing concern. That thing's about to go critical. If it detonates, it'll take half the continent with it. Then we must work quickly, Nixis said, moving toward the core. The containment sequence requires 2 operators, 1 human, 1 Kthar. A failsafe built into its design. Let me guess, a symbol of cooperation between our species? Raven asked, following the warrior. Indeed. Though I doubt its creators anticipated quite this scenario. As they approached the core, its energy pulses grew more violent. Raven's cybernetic systems began to glitch, and even Nixis's natural bioluminescence flickered erratically. Together then? Raven asked, positioning herself at one of the control interfaces. Nixis took her position at the opposite console, her golden eyes meeting Raven's across the crackling energy field between them. Together. Neither of them spoke the obvious truth, that if they failed, they would be the first casualties of the war they were trying to prevent. But in that moment, as human and alien worked in perfect harmony to prevent catastrophe, both felt the walls between their worlds beginning to crumble. The quantum core's containment sequence left both Raven and Nixis drained but alive. Purple energy still pulsed through the chamber, but now in stable, controlled waves rather than chaotic bursts. In the relative calm that followed, Raven found herself studying the Kthar warrior with new appreciation. Your timing is precise, Nixis observed, her golden eyes fixed on the core as she extracted a crystalline data module. Most humans would have faltered during the synchronization. Most humans haven't spent years breaking into alien tech, Raven replied, then immediately regretted her candor. Her mysterious client's warning echoed in her mind, get the core, eliminate any complications. Looking at Nixis now, she couldn't imagine following through on that part of the contract. The warrior turned, catching Raven's troubled expression. You hide something, mercenary. It wasn't a question. Don't we both? Raven countered, her cybernetic eye registering the subtle changes in Nixis's posture, the way she shifted the data module slightly behind her, the tension in her shoulders. The air between them grew heavy with unspoken truths. Finally, Nixis spoke, her voice carrying an edge of resignation. The Kthar do not merely seek to prevent war. We require humanity's biological diversity. Our species is dying, Raven. Generations of genetic manipulation have left us unable to adapt to new diseases. Raven's breath caught. And human DNA could save you? Perhaps. But there are those who would rather steal this salvation through conquest than request it through diplomacy. Nixis stepped closer, her iridescent skin shimmering in the core's purple light. Now, share your truth. Raven's hand drifted to her rifle, then fell away. My client wants the core destroyed, along with anyone who knows its contents. They're paying enough to set me up for life. And yet here I stand, very much alive, Nixis observed, moving closer still. Yeah, well, turns out retirement funds aren't worth much when you can't sleep at night. Raven managed a weak smile. Besides, you're starting to grow on me. Their eyes met, and the tension shifted into something else entirely. Nixis reached out, her fingers tracing the cybernetic implants around Raven's eye. These augmentations, they were not by choice. Raven fought the urge to lean into the touch. Pirate raid on my colony when I was younger. The medic said it was either experimental cybersurgery or blindness. Turns out it was a blessing in disguise, gave me the edge I needed to survive in this business. You speak of survival, but I sense you desire more. Nixis's hand moved to Raven's cheek, and the human's pulse quickened. As do I. The moment shattered as emergency klaxons blared throughout the ship. Raven's cybernetic eye detected multiple heat signatures approaching rapidly. Crimson Dawn found us, Nixis growled, her energy blade humming to life. They will not stop until they have the core. Then let's give them something else to worry about. Raven pulled a device from her pack, a miniature EMP generator. This'll fry their tech, but it'll knock out my cyber systems too. Think you can keep me alive for a few minutes? Nixis's lips curved in a predatory smile. I will ensure you survive long enough to finish our discussion. The first wave of attackers burst through the chamber's doors, a mix of Cthar warriors and human mercenaries. Raven activated the EMP, plunging the chamber into darkness as all electronic systems failed. Her cybernetic eye went dark, leaving her half-blind, but she could still hear Nixis moving through the chaos like a force of nature. They fought back-to-back, Raven's traditional combat training complementing Nixis's enhanced abilities. Each time Raven faltered, the warrior was there, protecting her vulnerable side. Each time an attacker slipped past Nixis's guard, Raven's bullets found their mark. Your client, Nixis called over the sound of combat, her energy blade cleaving through an attacker's armor. They are connected to the Crimson Dawn? Definitely, Raven replied, ducking under a vibroblade swing. Someone's playing both sides, trying to push us into war. The question is who? Perhaps we should survive this battle before solving that mystery. Nixis pulled Raven close, spinning them both away from a plasma burst that melted the deck where they'd been standing. The fight gradually turned in their favor as more attackers fell. Raven's cybernetic systems began to reboot, revealing the extent of their victory. Bodies littered the chamber, and the survivors were retreating. We must move quickly, Nixis said, retrieving the data module. They will return with reinforcements. About that. Raven hesitated, then made a decision. I know somewhere we can lay low. A sanctuary station in neutral space. But we'll have to trust each other completely. Nixis studied her for a long moment, golden eyes seeming to peer into Raven's soul. Trust is not easily given among the Cthar. Yet you have earned more than trust from me. The warrior stepped forward, closing the distance between them. Before Raven could respond, Nixis pressed her forehead against hers, an intimate gesture among her people. Lead the way, Raven Blackwood. Our fates are now intertwined. As they made their way out of the ruined ship, both women knew they had crossed a line. Their mission had become personal, their loyalty to each other overshadowing their original objectives. But with powerful forces arrayed against them and secrets still unrevealed, their growing bond would face tests neither could imagine. The sanctuary station hung in the void like a tarnished jewel, its ancient solar sails catching the light of distant stars. Raven guided their stolen shuttle through the debris field that surrounded the station, a natural defense system that discouraged casual visitors. Omega Haven, she explained, noticing Nixis's curious expression. Built during the First Contact Wars, before the treaties. Neutral ground where both species could meet in secret. Nixis stood behind Raven's pilot chair, one hand resting on the human's shoulder. You have interesting friends, mercenary. More like dangerous acquaintances who owe me favors, Raven replied, expertly weaving through the wreckage. The station's run by an AI that doesn't care about species or politics. All it wants is payment and peace. As they approached the docking bay, Raven's communications panel lit up with an incoming transmission. The face that appeared belonged to a stern-looking human woman with silver hair and cybernetic implants even more extensive than Raven's. "Blackwood," the woman said coldly. "You have some nerve showing up here after that business on Europa." "Good to see you too, Director Thane." Raven managed her most charming smile. "Water under the bridge, right? We need sanctuary." Thane's augmented eyes flickered to Nixus. "A Kthar warrior? Interesting company you're keeping these days. What kind of trouble are you bringing to my station?" "The kind that could prevent an interstellar war," Nixus interjected, her presence commanding even through the video feed. "We carry evidence of a conspiracy between human and Kthar extremists. And half the galaxy's mercenaries on our tail," Raven added. "Come on, Thane. You know me, I wouldn't come here unless it was important." The director studied them for a long moment before sighing. "Dock at Bay 7. And Blackwood? If this goes sideways, I'm spacing you myself." The transmission cut off, and Raven guided their shuttle into the designated bay. As they walked through the station's corridors, Nixus took in the unique atmosphere of Omega Haven. Humans and aliens of various species mingled freely, conducting business or simply enjoying the station's numerous entertainment venues. "This place," Nixus mused, "it represents what our peoples could achieve together." "Yeah, well, first we need to expose the ones trying to tear us apart," Raven replied, leading them to a secure communications center. "The quantum core's data should tell us who's really behind the Crimson Dawn." They settled into a private booth, and Raven connected the data module to the station's systems. Information scrolled across the holographic display: shipping manifests, classified communications, financial transactions. A complex web of corruption and manipulation began to emerge. "By the ancestors," Nixus breathed, her golden eyes widening. "The conspiracy reaches further than we imagined. Members of the Kthar High Council, human military officials, corporate executives. All working together to profit from conflict," Raven finished, her cybernetic eye recording everything. "They've been orchestrating small skirmishes, building tension, waiting for the right moment to trigger all-out war." A new file appeared on the screen, and Raven's blood ran cold. That's my client. Admiral Marcus Shaw. He's been playing both sides, selling weapons to the Crimson Dawn while pushing for aggressive action against the Kthar in human space. And my own mission," Nixus added grimly, "was compromised from the start. The council members who sent me knew I would be attacked. They needed a martyr to justify their calls for war." Their eyes met, understanding passing between them. They had both been pawns in a larger game, expendable pieces to be sacrificed for profit and power. But together, they had become something else entirely, a threat to those who would destroy peace for their own gain. Suddenly, the station's alarms blared. Director Thane's voice came over the intercom, tension evident in her tone. "Multiple ships dropping out of hyperspace. Crimson Dawn signatures detected. Blackwood, whatever you've stirred up just followed you here." Raven quickly copied the data to multiple secure channels, ensuring the truth would spread even if they didn't survive. "They must have tracked our shuttle. We need to dash." The rest of her sentence was cut off as an explosion rocked the station. Emergency barriers slammed down, and artificial gravity flickered. Through the viewport, they could see enemy ships engaging the station's defensive systems. They would attack a neutral station? Nixus's voice carried equal parts shock and rage. "This violates every treaty, every code of honor." "Honor doesn't matter to people like them," Raven replied, checking her weapons. "But we're not done yet. Thane has a prototype stealth ship in her private bay. If we can reach it." Nixus caught Raven's arm, pulling her close. "This may be our last battle together, Raven Blackwood. There is something you should know." "Save it," Raven said softly, pressing her forehead to Nixus's in the Kthar gesture of intimacy. "Tell me after we survive this." The warrior's golden eyes softened for a moment before hardening with determination. "Then let us ensure we both survive to have that conversation." As they prepared to fight their way through the chaos-engulfed station, both women knew they stood at a crossroads. Their choices in the next few hours would determine not just their own fates, but the future of human-Cathar relations. The conspiracy they had uncovered was powerful, but they had something their enemies hadn't counted on, a bond that transcended species and duty. The station shuddered with another impact, and emergency lights bathed the corridor in crimson. Raven and Nixus moved as one, weapons ready, united in purpose. Whatever came next, they would face it together. Chaos reigned through the corridors of Omega Haven as Raven and Nixus fought their way toward Director Thane's private hangar. The station's artificial atmosphere filled with smoke from multiple breaches, and the screams of civilians mixed with weapons fire. "Barricade up ahead," Raven called out, her cybernetic eye piercing the haze. A group of Crimson Dawn operatives had set up a defensive position, blocking their path. Nixus's energy blade hummed with increasing intensity. "They dishonor themselves by endangering innocents. This ends now." The warrior moved with deadly grace, her blade carving through the barricade while Raven provided covering fire. Their movements had become perfectly synchronized, each anticipating the other's actions without need for words. The defenders fell before their combined assault. "The hangar's just ahead," Raven said, pausing to hack a sealed security door. "Thane's prototype should have enough stealth capability to get us past the blockade." A familiar voice crackled over their comm units. "I'm afraid that ship won't be going anywhere." Admiral Shaw's smug tone made Raven's blood boil. "Did you really think we wouldn't have contingencies for this situation?" The door slid open to reveal Director Thane being held at gunpoint by Shaw himself, flanked by both human and Kthar troops. The Admiral's cybernetic implants glowed with an unhealthy red light. "The famous Raven Blackwood," Shaw sneered. "Always trying to play the hero. And you, Nixus Kthar, your own council signed your death warrant. The perfect martyrs for our cause. You would sacrifice millions for profit," Nixus growled, her golden eyes blazing. "Both our species would be devastated by war." "Evolution through conflict," Shaw replied. "The strongest survive, and we control who's strongest. Now, hand over the data core." Raven's mind raced, catching Nixus's subtle hand signal, a Kthar battle gesture she'd learned during their time together. The warrior had a plan. "You know what's funny, Admiral?" Raven stepped forward, drawing attention. "For someone so obsessed with strength, you never learned the most important lesson about power." "And what's that?" "Never monologue when your opponent has backup." Director Thane chose that moment to strike, her cybernetic arm transforming into a weapon. Nixus moved in perfect synchronization, her energy blade cutting through Shaw's guards while Raven dove for cover, her plasma rifle finding multiple targets. Shaw roared in fury, his own cybernetic enhancements activating as he engaged Raven in close combat. His augmented strength sent her flying, but she rolled with the impact, coming up shooting. "The data's already out there," Raven taunted, dodging another enhanced strike. "Every news network in both territories is getting proof of your conspiracy. It's over." "Nothing's over." Shaw's cybernetics pulsed with dangerous energy. "If I can't have my war, I'll settle for destroying this station and everyone on it." He pulled out a quantum detonator, similar to the destabilized core they'd contained earlier. But before he could activate it, an energy blade erupted from his chest. Nixus stood behind him, her expression fierce. "No more death for your ambitions," she declared, withdrawing her blade as Shaw collapsed. The remaining Crimson Dawn forces, seeing their leader fall, began to retreat. Director Thane's security teams moved in, securing the area. "We need to get to the command center," Thane said urgently. "The enemy fleet is still out there, and they might have their own suicide protocols. Racing through the station, they reached the command center in time to see the Crimson Dawn ships charging weapons. But before they could fire, new signatures appeared on the radar. Multiple hyperspace signatures, Thane reported. It's the combined fleet. Both human and Kthar ships, working together. The transmission screen lit up with the face of a Kthar High Commander. This is Commander Valthor. We received your evidence of the conspiracy. The combined fleet stands ready to protect Omega Haven and arrest all Crimson Dawn conspirators. The enemy ships, realizing they were now hopelessly outnumbered, powered down their weapons. The crisis was over. In the aftermath, as medical teams treated the wounded and security forces rounded up the surviving conspirators, Raven found herself standing with Nixus in the station's observation dome. The combined fleet hung in space before them, a powerful symbol of what their peoples could achieve together. So, Raven said softly, about that conversation you wanted to have before the fighting started. Nixus turned to her, golden eyes soft with emotion. My people have a saying, destiny writes our paths, but courage draws the map. You have shown me a new path, Raven Blackwood. Pretty sure you've done the same for me, Raven replied, stepping closer. So what happens now? The combined fleet will need advisors who understand both our peoples, Nixus said. Those who can bridge the gap between our worlds. And perhaps. She reached out, tracing the line of Raven's cybernetic implants. Perhaps show others that different species can do more than just coexist. Are you proposing a long-term partnership, warrior? Raven asked with a smile. I am proposing whatever you wish it to be, Nixus answered, pulling her close. We have mapped our own destiny. Now we must have the courage to follow it. As their lips met, the stars seemed to shine brighter through the observation dome. They had begun as enemies, become allies, and found something more precious than either had imagined possible. Their story would become legend, the mercenary and the warrior who chose love over duty, and in doing so, helped forge a lasting peace between their peoples. Behind them, the combined fleet stood guard over Omega Haven, its very existence a promise of a future where barriers between species could be broken, where understanding could triumph over fear, and where love could bloom in the most unexpected places among the stars.